The Mid-America Veterans Museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. Your donations serve to further the museum's mission of sharing and preserving the stories of our veterans. To donate, visit mavm.org and click on Donate. The content covered in this podcast is for general informational, historical, and educational purposes only. Discussions about historical events, military service, personal experiences, or sensitive topics are presented for educational and archival purposes. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the host and/or guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy or endorsement of the Mid-America Veterans Museum. Neither the organization, host, director, nor the guest shall at any time be liable for the content covered, causing offense, distress, or any other reaction.
Welcome to the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum with your host, Jason Galvin and Sergeant Ethan Gross. Welcome back, family. We are so glad to be back in the studio tonight with a very special guest here with us. Ethan, I know you're glad. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest tonight?
Yeah, tonight we have a first for Operation Insight and a first for the podcast in general. We have Master Sergeant Kathy Nix. She was a military musician. She was an oboist, a saxophonist, and a drum major for the Air National Guard. She served active duty from June 1980 until April of 1984, and then went into the National Guard from there until September of 2013. And for those out there thinking, well, that seems like a long time, it was a long time. That's 33 years of service to our nation that Kathy gave. And so, Kathy, first I want to thank you for the service that you gave to our nation.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank you for being here and being willing to talk about your time in the Air Force.
My pleasure.
So let's start from the very beginning. You didn't have much of a choice about being a military family member.
No.
You were born into it, in fact.
Right.
So you were born at McChord Air Force Base / Fort Lewis, now JBLM in Tacoma, Washington. And you were born to, I don't know if he was a major at that point, but you were born to Roy Nix, who retired as a major from the Air Force. So tell us about your father specifically, but also your family in general.
Sure. Well, my father was a 20-year serviceman, and he was based in several places, mainly as a communications officer. He did serve some time at Scott, where my older sister was born, and he also served in Germany, where my brother was born.
You guys kind of sprinkled all over the place there.
And then I came along in Tacoma, and that was it for them.
Yeah.
And, they got to go to some cool places, but one of the cool places I got to go as a military brat was in Taiwan.
Oh, nice.
So we served 2 years in Taiwan, and my father was working in communications with the Chinese Air Force and worked with Chiang Kai-shek and things like that. So
that's really incredible.
So that was incredible, right? It was a nice experience for a kid like me who loved to wander off and see what was out there. Got in a lot of trouble for that, but anyway, it was a great experience.
Tell us about your mom.
My mom was also a musician.
Okay,
and she taught
cool.
piano in our home and was choir director at church and played the organ and everything like that and taught music. And she was, I think, the perfect officer's wife. And
what makes you say that? What does it take to be an officer's wife?
She just loved being, an officer's wife. And
was it the decorum kind of thing that she enjoyed?
Well, I just think she just loved the atmosphere
Gotcha.
and, being part of the military family
I
and,
see.
bringing up
It's-
kids on the base. And
It suited her well.
sure.
Well, I mean, it's funny because you hear people talk about, oh, you're such a great mixture of your parents. Kathy's like the primo example of a mixture of her mom and dad. You have the military side from your dad and the musician side from your mom. Did your dad have any musicianship?
He tried to sing in the choir, but
They told him not to.
Yeah, emphasis on tried.
yeah, he appreciates it.
You said your mom she played the piano and
Yes.
she was a choir director?
And actually, she also played the oboe when she was in high school.
Oh, wow.
I was an oboe player,
Yeah.
so
So would it be fair to say, this might sound like an obvious question, but I just want to make sure. Would it be fair to say that your mom was a direct influence in your career?
absolutely, she was. And my brother was a musician as well. He was
nice.
a classical pianist.
Wow.
So
Tell us about his career, if you don't mind. I'd be curious to hear about that.
he was mainly a church organist, and he did a lot of that and taught piano in his home, just like my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah, his wife was more the bread maker, and
And he got to do his
and he
creative
had to-
thing.
yeah, and he did his creative thing and
Very creative. That's awesome.
made his kids take violin lessons
Yeah.
and things like that. Yeah.
So it's funny. I thought you were going to make a joke earlier about the exotic place you got to go to as a military family member. I thought you were going to say North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh no.
No, Taiwan's a lot better.
Yeah. Well, my dad is from a small town in Arkansas called Smackover.
Smack over.
So
Oh, my goodness.
so you can say that was an exotic place. I've been there.
So when was it you all moved to Arkansas?
Well, when my dad retired, we were living in Nebraska. He was stationed at Offutt Air Force Base.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, out of Omaha.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was his last station. So after that, we moved to North Little Rock, and his family and my mom's family were living in southern Arkansas. So they wanted to be close to them.
It just sort of made sense, that relocation.
Yeah. Yep.
What was life like in Arkansas for you as a child?
It was all right. I wish there were more opportunity. I didn't really get the opportunity to study with, some good people
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
musically anyway.
You already knew that you wanted a musical career in some
Yeah,
form or
I knew
fashion.
I had a passion
Yeah.
for music and the orchestra, and there really wasn't a good teacher there. But I did the best I could to develop myself.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, it almost seems like your life in Arkansas lent itself to joining the military. There wasn't much opportunity there. Was that a draw for you for the military?
Well, actually, I didn't really think about joining the military for a long time. I actually went to college for 2 years after that down in Louisiana. And after 2 years and playing around too much, I left college and took some time out to just, I don't know, just kind of
Figure it out.
and figure it out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in the meantime, I had gone to Barksdale Air Force Base in where's that? Shreveport, Louisiana.
Okay.
They had a band there, and I auditioned. But I didn't make the decision right away to join. My audition was good for a whole year, so I had some time to decide. And then one day I thought, maybe I should just do this.
So this is a great segue. Jason and I were telling you this earlier, Kathy. We're very ignorant to the process of becoming a military musician. So that's number one. You audition.
Right.
And that audition, as long as you've passed it, is good for a whole year.
Sure. I mean, you still have to take the ASVAB test and everything.
Is that one instrument you're proficient in that they test you on, or is it?
Right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you go in saying, I want to do this instrument. This is what I'm
Yes.
qualifying on.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
What do you recall about the audition process?
Well, the air conditioning was broken.
Oh.
Good start.
And so, yeah, I was sweating. And I was auditioned by the commander of the band and a few other members.
Were they in uniform during the
yes.
audition? Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
So already very kind of official and stately feeling.
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually had an opportunity to play with them for something that was going on in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So they had come up for, I think it was a bandmasters convention or something like that, and they were one of the guest performing groups, and they needed an oboist, so I got to perform with them on
And
something.
was that during that time period in which you were still deciding whether you wanted to take them up on the offer?
Yes.
Interesting.
The thing is that it was, I think I just wasn't quite sure I understood the whole thing.
Yeah.
I knew you played in the band, but I didn't quite understand the whole concept of a military band.
It is kind of a strange thing because you are still a uniformed service member, but you're also a musician.
Right.
And I would think that that's a dichotomy that would be difficult to merge. Did you feel at times, this is sort of getting ahead of us, but I'm just curious, did you feel at times that you were putting more emphasis on one or the other?
I think that I saw the opportunity to be a musician.
Gotcha.
And
before military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had, when I decided that this is what I wanted to do, I heard that they needed an oboe player at Scott Air Force Base. And I thought, oh, that's near St. Louis. They have a great symphony orchestra, great teachers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And school.
Yeah.
So that's what I was looking at, and it gave me the opportunity to develop myself as a professional musician.
Sure. Well, in reality, that's not so different from, I think, the standard path that a lot of people take when they join the military.
Yeah.
Right. You get your training.
Yeah, you
your
get
education.
training. Exactly. And so for you, it was just more specific.
Yep.
Musicianship.
Yeah.
Let me, because I got ahead of myself, let's just go back to the funnel process. So you've auditioned, you have a year to decide whether you want to take the Air Force up on their offer to join. Tell us about your dad's role, if any, in your process of deciding this.
Well, I think he kind of took a step back to just let me decide. I think he was really excited that I was looking at this.
Yeah.
And he actually wanted to, what's it called when they sign you in? You raise your right hand.
Oh, sure, enlistment.
Unless
He wanted to administer the oath.
He wanted to administer the oath. And
Yeah.
thing is that when I went in to do all the, all the things you got to do, like the physicals and stuff like that, and the paperwork, and then they swear you in.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't get the chance to do that, so he was kind of disappointed about that. But
Was he still present for it, though?
no, they
Oh,
just
he
kind of
missed the
threw
whole
us in a
thing.
whole room.
Oh,
and,
man.
They
I
just
didn't
put
know
you through
what
a
was
little
happening.
pipeline and you just
Yeah.
went through it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Wow.
a shame.
Yeah, but he was very excited that that's what I was going to be doing.
How'd your mom feel about it?
Oh, she wanted me to be just like her and find a nice young lieutenant to marry. And
Sorry,
I
Mom.
was like, Mom.
So take us back to when you decided. It sounds like the St. Louis thing, they need an oboist at Scott. That was obviously part of the decision-making. But take us back to when you finally made that decision that, you know what, I'm doing this. I'm joining.
I wasn't sure really what I was getting myself into.
Yeah.
Going to basic training was scary. And really, why on earth would I go to basic training in San Antonio, Texas in the middle of the summer? I don't know. But
What was scary about basic for you?
just when you're raised with a military father who's very, I don't know, let's be nice about it, very stern and
Sure.
commanding and things like that, it was, it was a little scary, but
Did that help in a way, though, already having that experience of sort of that military?
it kind of
aura?
did, yeah. And you just, you just do what you're told,
Sure.
Yeah.
You never told the
And-
drill sergeant that my dad wouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big no-no.
I'm just teasing.
What can you recall about conversations at Basic specifically? Because I'm really curious about this. Because I remember Basic. Everybody would ask about, what your MOS was or what your duty or Army job or whatever it's going to be. I'm curious. I'm sure you had conversations like that. And so what was the reaction like when you would tell people, well, I've joined to become an oboist?
They're like, what? The band?
Yeah.
Because, people, it was like they were hearing about it for the very first time.
Sure.
Nobody understood that. Nobody knew what the band was.
Yeah.
They thought it was just something you did on the side,
Sure.
I'll
be honest. For the first year or two while I was in the Army, if you had asked me what the band does, I would have guessed the same thing. Oh, that's like an extra duty, something they do on weekends or something like that. And funny enough, I was going TDY for training in California, actually. We talked about that earlier. And the NCO I was with, we got into an airport lounge, which was nice. And we sat down to eat our lunch, and a gentleman sat across from us. We got to talking, and he was in the Army band, one of the traveling Army bands. And for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, as we sat there and enjoyed our lunch together, he was telling us all about the responsibilities of being a military band member. And not only that, but the prestige of being in the military band. I hadn't even really thought about it, but just like you want the best of the best to be in your fighting force, the military wants the best of the best to be representing them on the stage.
Right.
Is that the experience you had, that they are looking for the best of the best in musicians?
Well, I tell you, the other military branches, if they want to be in the band, after basic training, had to go to music school in, I believe it's in Norfolk.
Okay.
The Air Force doesn't have to do that because we're the best.
I love it.
We, I don't know if that was really true or not, but, it seemed like most of us had, some college or maybe
Sure.
a degree or something like that. Nowadays, band members have PhDs.
Yeah.
Wow. Music theory and such.
Yeah. And I had 2 years of music education in college, which got me more stripes when I came in.
Nice.
And it's the audition really that
Sure.
really, that they can really tell
And sets you
who's the
apart.
best. Yeah, who's the best of the best.
Yeah, I would expect that audition, not only are they looking for someone who's competent on the instrument, but also someone who shows that, presence or prowess on the instrument. And so that's interesting. I didn't know that the other branches, it's almost like they go through musician basic training then. Or they...
Right.
What's
right.
that? Do you know what
well,
that process
they
is
take
like?
classes in music theory and,
Yeah.
and private lessons and
So it's
performance.
It's music boot camp, basically. That's fascinating.
I think it would have been cool to go to.
Sure. Yeah. And so you played the oboe, you played the saxophone, you were a drum major. Did all of that happen within the 4 years of active duty, or that was spread out throughout your career?
No. My main instrument was oboe, but when we
Okay.
did parades, and this was in active duty, my 4 years at Scott,
Yeah.
I played saxophone when we did parades and marching band and stuff like that because
Gotcha.
you don't march with an oboe. It's just not an instrument you march with.
Yeah,
You know, that and the bassoon. You know, you got to.
They don't make the cut for parades.
Right. So, so yeah, I had played some saxophone in high school, so it was something that I could just pick up and do for parades and things like that.
Wow.
So tell us what a typical day looks like as an oboist in the United States Air Force.
Well,
Are you doing the regular kind of PT and those kinds of things? Are you having your own special sort of day?
we do a lot of rehearsing.
Okay.
We had our own side job as we ran everything, administration, operations,
It's
Like,
a completely
like planning and stuff. Or?
planning,
Okay.
OSHA.
it's a completely
know.
self-sufficient unit. The
Right.
band is.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't have like your HR representative. Someone is also doing the HR thing within the band.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in the Guard, we were stationed at St. Louis, and we were an attachment to the wing.
Did you find that your unit was typically left alone?
Yes.
Now, I'm curious, since the answer to that is yes, do you think the reason for that was because they didn't know what to do with you guys?
Well, they didn't know what to do with us, and they didn't know what we did.
They didn't know who we were, what we were.
And yeah, they just left us alone to do
Yeah.
our own thing. The thing is that, back in the day, things were a little bit, more, I would say, loose.
Sure.
I think that's kind of why we were left alone. But as things evolved with, going to Desert Storm
Sure.
and Iraq and everything else like that,
Yeah.
things started to get more, I guess,
Organized.
organized.
Yeah.
And it also had to do with who was commander of our band at the time.
Mm.
Because really, part of the mission of the Air Force is to support other organizations
Sure.
or missions,
Yeah.
And whatever the band could do, we would support by playing for ceremonies, or our commander working with their commander,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So
Just having open communication.
So is it fair to say that the commander of the band really set the tone for your unit?
Yes.
This is going to sound like a dumb question probably. Is the commander also the conductor? It's
Yes.
the same person.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of
They
fascinating.
have to be the commander if they're the conductor.
Yes.
Okay,
That's
interesting.
fascinating.
That's very interesting.
Did that cause any sort of friction? Were similar to the question I asked earlier about musician versus service member? Were there times where your commander had to act in a capacity as a commander that hurt his or her rapport as the conductor with musicians?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How did that impact you guys as a unit?
Well, personally, I liked it because
You like the structure?
I liked the structure.
Yeah.
I liked actually feeling part. We started getting more recognition within the wing,
Sure.
based on the actions of our commander.
Sure.
Some, in the past, it wasn't so good. But then, as new people come on board, and things started changing a little bit, and they started recognizing us as, hey, they're not so bad after all.
Was part of that a product of you guys just getting out there and performing at events more? Is that how the commander would build kind of his rapport within the wing?
I think he would build his rapport with other commanders in the wing.
I see. he would build these interpersonal
Communication,
relationships.
interpersonal relationships. Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
And then that in and of itself would lead to more recognition of the band, which I'm guessing then in turn led to more offers for performances.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, the more things shaped up,
Yeah.
the better we got. And actually, they started sending bands over to Iraq, and it was mainly rock bands. So
Yeah.
we had rock bands as well,
Yeah.
members
Like
who
USO shows. That
So
kind
all
of thing.
flavors of bands then. Okay.
they were there was the concert band, and then there were members who were part that did a rock band,
Gotcha.
and then we had a jazz band. So and we were all the same people. The oboe is not a rock
Yeah,
instrument,
gonna say.
so I didn't get to go. We were our rock band at the 571st Air National Guard Band was the first Air Guard band to be deployed.
Oh wow, how about that?
Interesting.
Yeah, and
That was to
they
Iraq.
to Iraq, and they
Right.
set the bar for other Guard bands.
Yeah.
Very nice. I'm gonna have to
To
look into
go.
that. I've
Yeah.
never realized that.
You've given me a lot of different branches I can go down here, Kathy. But before I do, I want to make sure we do a bookend for your active duty time. Tell us what went into your decision to exit active duty and enter the National Guard. Why not stay active duty?
Good question. When I was active duty at Scott, I started taking classes at the St. Louis Conservatory of Music. And I started really getting into a good groove with my private teacher. And I started improving as a musician. And I wanted to continue that. And they were going to send me to Germany, which I had a really hard time deciding whether or not I wanted to do that, get out or go to Germany. And now I could kick myself for not going to Germany. But
I was going to say, wouldn't Germany have offered you some really unique opportunities?
I had heard, and this is how I made my decision, was that they would be on the road all the time.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be any time to go to classes or
I
do
see.
stuff like that, because you're constantly. I mean, it would have been great.
Sure.
An education, go to Greece, go to England, go to wherever that you need to go play.
Yeah. But it could have been at the cost of you advancing personally as a musician.
Exactly. So that's what my decision was.
I was gonna ask, do you feel within those 4 years of your active duty service that you became a better oboist?
I did.
Was that partially because of your private teacher? Was it just repetition breeds perfection? How did you become better? And
Good question.
how did that happen within those 4 years?
Well, I had a great teacher. She was assistant principal of the St. Louis Symphony. And I also studied with the principal oboist. And I got in with just playing with other people who, like me, wanted to be better musicians,
Yeah.
to actually play symphonic music instead of John Philip Sousa.
Over and over again.
Right. Nothing against that.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. Do you feel that if you had taken the opportunity, stayed active duty, and gone to Germany, you would have become stagnant as a musician?
I don't think so. I think what I had, I could have taken with me.
And found ways to improve.
Yeah.
Despite all the travel.
Sure.
That'd be a pretty sweet gig if you don't mind the traveling.
Yeah.
You know? You don't have a lot of downtime,
I
it
know,
sounds
call me
like.
stupid.
No. So then you decide to go National Guard. You were National Guard from 84 to 2013.
Amazing.
That's a lot of years.
Amazing.
A lot of
Yeah.
years with a lot of, as you referenced, a lot of different events going on during that time period. When you mentioned Iraq and Afghanistan, my thought was, well, that makes sense. The more activity, the more combat, the more ceremonial events are probably going to occur. Whether it's a president, a dignitary, or whatever, they're going to want a band there. Is that the right train of thought? The more military activity, the more performances are going to be asked for? Is it a product of that?
Sort of. For example, when Desert Storm came, we were going to several places at guard units, mostly Army Guard units, playing for the troops leaving.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the places we played at, I remember. We played. It may have been in Springfield, Missouri, or somewhere. Yeah. And we played as the helicopters were going by.
Wow, that's iconic.
That was my heart was just sinking when I saw those people, because it had been a long time since our country had seen something like that. Yeah. And I'd never seen it. I knew wars were going on, like I lived during the Vietnam War, but I wasn't that close to it,
right.
And this time, you were playing and you're looking, at the troops in formation. And I do remember, I have to say this, I remember seeing a young female pilot. And I noticed her because she was, pretty much, there weren't very many women,
sure.
there in the troops too that were leaving. And I thought, wow, that's a woman, and she's going, and she's a pilot. And I don't know, it was some weeks later that I saw her obituary.
Wow.
And her helicopter went down during training. Mm. And, it's those things that you get to see as when you're in formation, the band formation, and you get to see and you get to look out
at all those faces.
At all those faces. And,
Was it, if you can characterize it, was it worry? Was it a blank stare? What kind of expressions did you see?
I saw fear. I saw blank stares, just blank faces.
Their minds on something completely different.
Yeah.
I would imagine so.
I saw, Army sergeant crying.
Wow.
So.
What pieces would you guys typically perform at those events in particular?
There are certain marches that are for certain ceremonies. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you'll play a Sousa march, or can't remember some of the titles. Washington Post,
Sure.
Stars and Stripes.
Yeah.
Things like that, that are for those kinds of ceremonies.
Now you got to perform for, I count 3 presidents, I count 1 vice president. Tell us about the circumstances in which you played for Presidents Reagan, H.W. Bush, and George W.
Reagan was just for some kind of event he was in St. Louis for. I don't know. Sometimes they don't tell us what these things are for. We just know we have to go to some place and play.
Play Hail
it's
to the
going to
Chief.
It's going to be Reagan, and he's going to be there, and stuff like that.
Uniforms are all the same and all that jazz.
Right. But it's kind of neat to be, a few feet away from
the
president.
Neat. Very neat, yeah.
And George, for the first George, I don't remember what we played for him. And then Dan Quayle was for some. We don't remember the events. We just know we just play for them.
They say, get your oboe and show up. You're going to play.
Exactly.
And then George W., you mentioned, was American Legion Conference.
Yeah, he performed, or we performed. We didn't perform. We just played the music for when he was coming on. at the American Legion convention. And he actually, when he was done with his speech, he actually walked right over to the band and shook hands with the commander,
That's cool.
the band commander.
That's
So,
awesome.
That's
yeah,
cool.
that's pretty cool. So I was very close to that too. So
I have a side question that just popped into my brain, and I'm going to forget it if I don't ask it. Were these instruments owned by you or the government? And question B, I guess, would be the only thing I can equate my question to is a rifleman where the rifle is something they can break down, take care of, clean, and all that stuff. Did you take care of your instrument in a specific way, and was it inspected?
no, they were not inspected.
Okay.
But mine was a government instrument, and we did we bought the government bought instruments for us, but some people chose to play on their own, just for personal preference, and depending on what kind of environment we were in, like if I played outside, I would play on the government instrument. But if we were playing, a very symphonic concert, I would play on my oboe because it's more classical, and I know how to play on it.
Sure.
Well.
Was the quality different when you compare it to the government's instrument versus yours?
Well, yeah, because I really wanted the top of the line instrument.
Sure.
When I was active duty, I could have anything I wanted.
I see.
Okay.
Top of the line, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in the Guard, they kind of had a budget. So
Were some of the instruments hand-me-downs?
no.
Okay, it was never that kind of situation. And this is interesting. This is kind of foreshadowing to something we'll discuss later with Kathy. Part of the reason that Kathy decided to finally retire from the military is because her unit was disbanded. And we'll talk more about why the National Guard band units were disbanded. Thank you for that. That's a really interesting question. The instrument as a weapon. And is it inspected just like a weapon is inspected?
Well, some people say the oboe is a weapon. Mainly the trumpet section will say.
Nice.
Just 2 years ago, the President's Own was in town.
Right.
And I can't remember where they performed, but somewhere in St. Louis County.
I missed it.
Do you remember? I think it was about 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But a friend and I went to it. It was performed at, I think, a local church somewhere, and it was just phenomenal. A phenomenal performance. I mean, you couldn't catch a single mistake. I don't think there was any mistakes to catch, but it's very professional and very well done.
That band is perfect.
If you don't mind, I hope you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about the President's Own and what it means to be part of the President's Own.
Well, it's the Marine Band. The President's Own was George Washington's band. That's how it started.
It's incredible.
And so there's a history there,
Yeah.
and although other branches that are up there in Washington D.C. do get to play for the president,
Sure.
the President's Own is mainly the band for the inauguration.
Yeah, that's always the go-to.
And balls and things like that,
Yeah.
big parties.
Yeah. It was a great performance, and I absolutely loved it. The next thing I want to ask you about, because this is a fascinating part of our history, tell us about Rocky Sickman's homecoming and performing at that ceremony.
It was very exciting. You asked about how we all felt, sometime. Yeah. I thought it was really exciting. And, even though you're not supposed to move or look around or anything like that, I, out on the corner of my eye, got a shot of Rocky Sickman coming, down the aisle. And it was like, you're really proud and you're happy for them, and you think about what they went through, and just, it was, I like that part of my job is to do things like that.
Yeah.
We don't just, going around and playing concerts for the public was great. You know, I enjoyed that so much,
Yeah.
and we got to travel all over the country. But there are just times when you play for things like Rocky Sickman, or you go to a VA hospital and you play for retired veterans who may not have said anything, one word, the whole time we were there, that they were there.
Sure.
And then when we played, and afterwards, this Marine came up who hadn't spoken a word since he had been there, came up to the commander and said, "Thank you very much." That's when it's really,
Yeah.
you know, it really gets you in your heart.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
Yeah, it's like that's why you wear the uniform. That's why you hold the oboe, you know.
Mhm. Absolutely.
it's a fantastic segue to educating not only Jason and me, but also our audience, Kathy. Educate us from your perspective of the importance of military bands and what you represent.
You know, without sounding corny, you know, we represent America, you know, to the audience, to the people who are there when we are in a July 4th parade and we are marching down the street and they start clapping, you know, and waving and things like that. And we're playing, you know, a march, John Philip Sousa march or something like that, you know. And like I said, veterans homes, and I like to go around and talk to them, and they like to tell you their story.
Yeah.
You know, lots of World War II veterans I've met and heard their stories. One time we were on this, we were playing for this veterans event that was on a barge up in Chicago, and I met a survivor from Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. And he told me his story. That's the best part of my job,
It's amazing.
right there.
Wow, that's awesome.
You know,
Would you also characterize yourself as an ambassador?
absolutely.
Great. That's a great.
That's what I
That
would
that's
think.
what we are. We are the band represents. You know, we're ambassadors for the country and for who we are.
One of the things that it made me think of is, what does music do in general, and what does music do for people? Well, music is healing. It's something to do with when we celebrate. It's something we do just to have enjoyment as the listener, right? There's all kinds of things that it does to the listener. But my question to Kathy is, what does it do to the performer?
That's a great question. I've always taken pride, you know, in being able to perform, and as a musician playing for the audience, and you know, we're performing a certain piece that requires, you know, a lot of skill, or maybe there are parts of the music is emotional or something like that, and I try to convey that, you know, to the audience. You know, whatever I feel is what I try to convey.
Does it do any of those things to you too, like healing, or bring you joy or entertainment to yourself while you're performing? Or is it really just the actor performance?
You know, just depends on the type of music that I'm playing. You know, one time I did it was not an Air Force band concert. It was a civilian concert, and the type of music was by Bach, and it just, afterwards I was just feeling so very emotional, you know, just because of the content, you know, and the performance and just the music in general. So there are times when, as a musician, I can feel really good and feel really high about it, and then other times it just depends on what you're performing.
Okay,
You know,
that's fair. I was just interested because I know that when I listen to music, especially certain types of music, it creates something inside me. Sometimes it's intentionally that I choose that to feel that created thing, or sometimes especially when it catches me off guard and maybe I'm emotional about something, or so I didn't know how that was to the performer.
Well, and other times, like I said, depending on what you're playing, anytime we would play a march, and the conductor would get the people clapping, or something like that, and it makes you feel good and happy.
Absolutely.
Since you mentioned performing in a civilian capacity, I want to go through this list of some of your accolades and positions that you've held. You served as the artist liaison within the St. Louis Symphony. You worked with the Illinois Symphony out of Springfield, the capital. You were the director of the arts program for the Greater St. Louis YMCA. As you mentioned, you received your bachelor's from the St. Louis Conservatory of Music. And as we talked about, that is now part of Washington University through Webster. You received your master's in arts management from the University of Illinois in Springfield. And you've also performed with I think I'm getting this right, you performed with the San Antonio Symphony, or that was another sort of liaison role?
I was the interim orchestra manager for the San Antonio Symphony.
Interim orchestra manager, okay. What drew you to San Antonio? What was going on in your life at that point where you moved down to San Antonio?
Oh, I was just looking for a job.
Gotcha. Okay.
That tends to make you move.
How long did you hold the intern
I was there
position?
for a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, I really didn't want to stay there, but it was fun for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So am I missing anything from that list?
Evansville Philharmonic.
Oh, that's right. Evansville, Indiana Philharmonic.
And the St. Louis, you say St. Louis Philharmonic?
Mm.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
I said St. Louis Symphony. My bad. The St. Louis Philharmonic as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I played with Evansville and the St. Louis Philharmonic.
Gotcha.
Beautiful.
That artisan liaison role, I was really curious when you were describing that to us before we began recording. What did that encompass?
It was taking care of guest artists when they came into town, and everything from picking them up to the airport to making sure they got to the hall on time and helping them backstage with whatever their needs were, and contracts, and sometimes they would request a fruit tray, in their dressing room, so I had to do that, and just anything that they needed.
Are there any, this is a big ask, I know, because we're not very in tune with this world, but are there any big names we might recognize of people you took care of or you had to help along when they visited?
Well, the famous violinist Itzhak Perlman.
Oh.
Pavarotti.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
What was that like with Pavarotti?
He was great. He was lots of fun. Yeah, he's just full of just curiosity and and then he just walks up on stage and
belts it out.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Rudolf Serkin, who's a very famous pianist from back in the day, from the 40s, 30s, 40s. So many.
Yeah. What years did you hold that position?
Shortly after I got out of active duty.
Okay.
From 84 to 92, I think.
Oh, wow.
I was at the St. Louis Conservatory, and I managed to land that job, while I was a student. So Wynton Marsalis was one of them.
Okay.
Now that I keep thinking about all these people.
Yeah, you're going to be thinking about these all night.
That's fine. As they come, just say them. That's okay.
Yeah.
Did it sort of hurt your heart a little bit as a musician to have a role that wasn't as a musician at the symphony?
Yeah. It was the closest I could get.
Sure. Yeah.
And actually I got to know all the musicians, and that was great. I just loved it.
So did you ever try out for that, or how does that go? I'm not familiar with the
Well, you
workings.
audition,
Okay.
And it's you go through several rounds. It can be very intense
Mhm.
Yeah.
because they do take the best of the best. and whoever can play it better,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really just comes down to brass tacks, who can play it better.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and sound, and is your sound going to fit in with our sound? Do you play well with the section?
Yeah.
Are you gonna match the principal flute player?
I gotcha.
Something like that.
That sound aspect, I'm really curious about that, Kathy, because I think for a novice, I played trumpet in middle school. That was about the extent of my musicianship. But for someone like me who's not as attuned with instruments in that world, when I hear someone say, will your sound match ours? My first thought is, it's all the same instrument. How is the sound going to be that different? Explain for someone who's not as well versed in this world how sound can be different on the same instrument from one person to another.
You're going deep there, Ethan.
That is a great question. So, speaking from an oboist, we have what's called the American sound. There's the German sound, the French sound,
This is amazing to me. So there's almost different languages within the music. That's incredible.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. Or is it a stylistic thing?
Well, okay, so I'm an oboe player and I make my own reeds, okay? I make my own reeds to match the American sound. And now if you would listen to American oboists, in a symphony orchestra and compare that to an oboist in a French orchestra, you would see a big difference.
Wow.
Okay. Now I'm going to go home and test that.
That's so cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for digging a little deep on that one. I know it was kind of one of those head scratcher questions, but that's just, so I'm being a little bit modest. I sing in my spare time, and some buddies from high school and I have a band. Nothing cool or anything, but we enjoy it. But the instrument thing, yeah, after trumpet, after like 8th grade, I didn't touch it again, and I fiddled with guitar and piano when I was younger, but I don't do that anymore. But I was just really curious about that sound aspect. So from 84 to 92, you have that liaison position, and you're also studying at the conservatory.
Right.
What changes in 92 where you leave that liaison position?
Well, I was laid off for one thing.
Oh, okay.
So they started going through, a little bit of a budget crisis, I think.
What was next for you after that then?
I really had a difficult time, with figuring out what I was going to do, and so I thought, I'll go back to school and go to grad school and get a degree in music. And I got a grad assistantship at Ball State in Muncie, Indiana.
Oh, wow, okay.
And after a year, I didn't like that. I thought this isn't where I'm going. And then that's when I decided to go to school in Springfield to get my arts management degree.
Gotcha.
Because, the music world is so competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I put myself through many auditions, lots of rejections, and things like that. And so, maybe I could stay within the music world and be a manager or something like that. So that's why I did that.
You've reminded me of something I wanted to ask, because you just said the word rejection, and I hadn't even thought about that until just this very moment, Kathy. I would imagine, if I'm wrong, please tell me, I would imagine as a military musician, you probably had a great amount of pride in your musicianship. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I would imagine, since that's the case, that rejection on the civilian side was probably really hard to take.
Very hard.
How'd you overcome that?
Jim Beam.
Hey.
Do what you got to do.
That's right. Jose Cuervo, you are a friend of mine.
No.
Did you feel when you went into rehearsal for auditions on the civilian side that you had a step up from the civilian auditioners? Did you feel as though because you were a military musician that gave you an advantage?
Oh, no, they didn't care. You
They
know,
didn't
it was
care.
like, and besides, you know,
Yeah.
everything is behind screen.
Ah.
So they can't see who you are.
Oh.
They can't see if
Oh.
you're a male or female.
There's no
So they,
bias.
you know, they can't discriminate against you. Because there was lots of discrimination before they started having screens up,
Oh, that's interesting.
you know.
At what point in time did that become common practice, the screens?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe in the 90s, early
That's fascinating.
90s, something.
And that's fairly common practice, have a screen
Yes.
during audition?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
And I didn't really like it because I like seeing who I'm playing for.
Sure.
You know. But
Did that allow you to kind of emote more in your music when you could see who your audience was? Was
Yeah.
that the reason?
That makes perfect sense.
Was the Air Force audition behind a screen?
no,
Okay, so that one they're looking at
it
you.
was in front of 4 men.
Wow.
This, I think this lends itself to a conversation that Kathy's been kind enough to give Jason and I permission to discuss. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was enacted during Bill Clinton's administration. I think the year might have been 94. It was repealed by President Obama in 2011. Now, I'm no expert in this, but Don't Ask, Don't Tell was enacted partially in response to homosexual service members being discriminated against for their sexuality. And so President Clinton and his administration were attempting to fix that by simply saying, well, if we don't know, then no one can discriminate. So don't ask as a superior and don't tell as the service member. I'd love to get your perspective, Kathy. Jason and I would absolutely love to get your perspective on, because you've seen pre, during, and post. If you would, from your personal experience, tell us about the impact of being in the LGBTQ community as a service member.
Well, when I was at Scott from 80 to 84, it wasn't until probably the year of 1984 is when they started having witch hunts at Scott Air Force Base. And although I was pretty much in the closet, I don't think I told anyone in the band, except for maybe my best friend, and it was one night when we were drunk. And you know, it was really concerning to me, and it was scary, and I felt bad for other people because some people were being kicked out just by guilty by association, and so that ruined some people's careers. So after leaving active duty and going into the Guard, it didn't seem to really be an issue. People would tease, you know, oh, don't ask, don't tell, you know, or something like
Sure.
that, and make jokes about it.
Yeah.
You know, the Guard was 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year.
Yeah.
You know, you come together 1 month and you play music, and
The proximity just
nobody
isn't
really
there.
cared what you did.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and we were, you know, the band is a family, and I think it's the most accepting group of people that I've ever served with and that I've ever known. And it just kind of worked itself out, you know, that people would find out or would hear it from somebody else, but it never came back to me,
Yeah.
and nobody told on me, you know. And then eventually, you know, they got to know my girlfriend, and then eventually Pat, yeah.
Gotcha.
And you know, I told my commander that I had gotten married, and he just kind of gave me a stare look, you know.
What year was that?
It was actually towards the end of my enlistment or
Okay.
my time in
Gotcha.
the Guard, because I think it was it 2012 or something that President Obama.
I think 2011 is when the repeal
2011?
occurred. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and and I told a few of my band friends that I was getting married and things like that.
Did Don't Ask, Don't Tell and that policy delay your marriage to Pat? Or was that a factor?
No, because it wasn't legal. And
Oh, I see. That's
yeah.
right.
It wasn't legal until, I don't know.
That's right.
We went to Massachusetts. We went to Provincetown, Massachusetts to get married because it was legal there.
Sure.
It wasn't
Wow.
legal in Missouri at the time
That's right.
that we did it. But then eventually it became legal all over.
Yeah. This feels like eons ago.
How did it feel to you? Did it feel like eons ago?
Yeah.
When she said, "No one told on me,"
Yeah.
I almost kind of got shivers down my spine.
Yeah.
To think that there was a time in our military where you had to worry about being ratted on for who you love.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple questions to ask. The first question I have is, when did you, if you can remember, when did you feel like you could be who you were versus who you thought they wanted you to be?
When I got into the Guard.
What did it feel like?
I didn't really, when I got enlisted into the Guard, it wasn't like I went around and told everybody.
Sure.
I didn't really talk about it, but I felt comfortable that, if these people knew, they'd be okay with it. And little by little, I was able to come out to them. Certain ones. There were certain ones that I didn't really feel comfortable talking
Sure.
to them about it, but just little by little, I started to feel more comfortable.
Did your family know that you were in this community and how you identified, and how did that affect you? Either way.
They, the situation kind of unfolded when I was about 15, and it wasn't a very good situation.
Yeah.
And, in between then and, I don't know, it was around the late 90s or 2000 or something like that. And my family started coming around, and started accepting me, and eventually asked me to bring Pat home for Thanksgiving. And that was a big shock, things like that. So that was really, in my mind, was a big miracle.
Yeah. Especially the holidays. That's a huge event, Ethan, do you have any questions around that? I'm sorry, I don't mean to take over.
No, it's perfectly all right. I was going to ask about your courtship with Pat, if you wouldn't mind sharing how you guys met and how you guys
geez.
connected.
We met through a mutual friend, and we were just, I don't know, we just started out as friends, I think.
Yeah.
I think at the time we were, just needing some companionship, and I think we probably dated for about 3 years before we moved in, and we've been through a lot together, and lots of personal things and family things, and we've been together for 38 years.
Wow.
38 years and married for 15.
Do you think your dad's military career and being a career military man affected his ability to accept your lifestyle?
Oh, probably. And his upbringing, his background.
Yeah.
He was from the backwoods of Arkansas.
So, you mentioned the 38 years you and Pat had been together?
Right.
That's incredible. What do you remember about going to Massachusetts to get married? What was that process like?
Oh, it was so exciting because, here we were finally allowed to do this,
Yeah.
like everybody.
Yeah.
And walking into the city hall and, filling out the paper for the license and things
Sure.
like that was like, we thought maybe they were going to say, you can't do that.
There was still a little bit of fear
Yeah.
in the back of your head.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that part of your personal
Yes,
life.
thank
That's
you.
very transparent. I really appreciate that.
I think, one of the things I'm worried about now with this current administration is, what's going on and kicking certain people out because of who they are. And, I'm thinking, well, gee, if they want to serve and they can do the job, why not?
Yeah.
Why kick out a certain group of people?
Yeah.
It just really saddens me.
One last thing on this topic I wanted to mention, Jason, because we certainly hope that this episode gets out there to the masses. There is still a large portion of veterans, LGBTQ veterans, who were dishonorably discharged from the military because of their orientation, and they have still not received the proper restitution. A dishonorable discharge, I'm sure, as you know, Kathy, can really affect your entire career for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost never get a federal position after that. You will not receive TRICARE, the military insurance. You won't receive VA benefits. All of that's gone with a dishonorable discharge. So we certainly hope that at some point in time the proper accommodations are made for those individuals who served their country selflessly and were kicked out wrongly. I want to echo what Jason said, Kathy. Thank you for being so open and honest about your experience with that.
Absolutely.
You are our first, not only our first military oboist, but you are the first veteran that we've had on, whether in this iteration or the previous, the dog tag, who has openly spoken upon, possibly could have spoken upon their experience with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So we appreciate your perspective.
Kathy, if you were talking to your younger self about this process, and maybe someone who is just now experiencing this, do you have any words of wisdom that you would provide to anybody that might be experiencing something like this, where they feel they can't be their authentic selves?
Well, I would just say, keep on fighting. Believe in yourself, that there's nothing wrong with you. And that you just need to be true to yourself and don't let other people dictate to you what you can and cannot do.
Thank you.
I want to get into the end of your time in service, Kathy, because it harkens back to a conversation we touched upon earlier. Before we began recording, as I was making sure I had some of the dates right, you had mentioned that you would have stayed in longer beyond September of 2013, but your unit was disbanded.
Right.
Remind Jason and I and tell our audience one of the main reasons why that unit was disbanded.
Well, I believe that, I think I said, because they wanted to pay for the bombs, first of all.
Bombs, not
They didn't pay
bassoons.
yeah, exactly.
That'd be a good tattoo.
Yeah.
Right?
So an appreciation for the arts and bands, specifically in the National Guard, Air National Guard, went away.
I think there was somebody in Washington, D.C. that did not have an understanding of what bands were for. They probably thought all we did was just sit around and play instruments and stuff like that. And we're using up resources, according to them. And they felt that all the bands in the Air National Guard needed to be disbanded. And so little by little, the bands were trickling down. And actually, throughout that time I was in the Guard, a few of the active duty bands were disbanded. And I think it's just a matter of money and people not understanding what we do.
And it's so sad that the arts go first.
Yeah.
Everywhere,
You know?
the arts go first.
And it's incredible because the arts are like food for our soul, you know what I mean? So it's just interesting how...
And it's one of the things that makes humans very unique.
Exactly.
Yeah, feeds the soul is a great way to put it. And so as of right now, there are no Air National Guard band units.
Right.
They're gone.
They're gone.
From your perspective, Kathy, what is lost now that there are no specifically Air National Guard bands in existence any longer?
Well, you're not going to see a military band march down a street in a small town in Nebraska. You're not going to see, a band being called at the last minute because President so-and-so is coming in. Or you're not going to have a military band playing when the troops are being deployed. Or to bring out the first and only words that a Marine said since they had been at the VA home. You're not going to pull that out. You're not going to have that spirit that the people want and need.
Well said.
One of the beautiful things about National Guard units, Kathy's going to know this, obviously, having been in one, but one of the beautiful things about Guard units is they're sprinkled throughout the entire country. As Kathy knows, we're fortunate here in St. Louis to have Scott Air Force Base. There are many spans of territory across the country that do not have active duty bases. And so, as Kathy mentioned, they do not have access to military bands because there's just not the capacity for it. So, and she said it so beautifully. It could not have been said better. All of those beautiful little moments that Kathy was fortunate enough to be part of are now gone. You're not going to have those moments in the VA hospital. You're not going to have those moments in a small town parade.
Kind of takes some pride away from the community.
Yeah.
That the Guard unit is, or the piece of the Guard
Sure.
unit is in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in a Guard unit, and I'm not a veteran, but a Guard unit, from my viewpoint and my lens, they're the community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The citizen soldier.
Exactly.
Or the citizen airman.
It sprung from the militia, the
Yeah.
American Revolution.
Right.
It was common folk banding together.
Yeah. And so they could look up to those people in many capacities.
Yeah.
And then we take away one of the things that is sometimes more meaningful than others, you know.
You're right. Citizen soldier. That's one of the beautiful aspects of both the Guard units and reserve units as well. And so the unit was disbanded. So was that basically they just said, okay, you're done? Was it kind of like that?
Well, there were about 4 or 5 of us that were retiring. And the rest of the Guard members either found other units or got out.
Yeah.
So we had a retirement ceremony, and we had a dissolving of a unit ceremony.
Sure. The furloughing of the colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember all those terms anymore.
Was that an emotional experience for you?
Yeah.
It's 33 years.
Sad.
Well, I guess that would have been 29 years in National Guard.
Right.
With that unit in particular, or there was multiple units?
29 with the Guard.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
All with the same unit. That's
Yes, same unit.
That's incredible.
You know, I'm not a musician, but one of my favorite movies is Mr. Holland's Opus. And if you've seen that movie at the end where band is being taken away, I mean, this is just high school band, you know, but the emotional ride that the movie takes you through, the film takes you through, especially through the feeling of Mr. Holland. And I can't remember exactly what scene, and I know this is irrelevant to being a veteran, but there's an emptiness there at one point in the movie where there's nothing left because the band is not going to have a home anymore.
Yeah.
They're not going to have a band there. Have you seen the movie?
Yes,
Do you
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about?
I do. Hmm.
Did you feel some of that emptiness?
Yeah, I sure did. And I felt sorry for the band director, really did, because that was his passion, was to teach music to the kids. But what was so neat was one of his students came down and turned out that she was mayor of a town,
Right.
and it's what the music did.
Exactly.
It wasn't just about the band, it was what it did
Exactly.
for those students.
That's
you
a
know.
good point. And that's exactly what I meant by the
Sure.
small towns lose
Yep.
some of that identity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a really cool way to put that, Kathy. Thank you. Well, I'm very sorry to hear that that was the end of such a long career. Especially sorry to hear that it was deemed that those bands weren't necessary for the budget. I think that was the wrong decision. And a lot of people have missed out because of that. Before I forget, I want to give a shout out to Coco and Twyla, and obviously your wife, Pat. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you, Kathy, and I so appreciate your perspective that you gave us.
It's been a great opportunity.
The last thing I want to ask about, because I think this will be an important thing for you. It's got to be. Give us a summation of your time within the Honor Guard.
Mm. Besides, the band and playing with the VA and stuff at the VA, I think being in the Honor Guard was just a very honorable. I felt so honored to be able to do it. I learned how to fold that flag with pride and to present it to normally a spouse, and then rendering a salute. I would probably do it 2, 3, maybe even 4 times a day, and it doesn't get old.
I just had a connection from something we mentioned earlier that I'm struggling to put together, but Kathy, I think you can do it for me. I think there's a through line from those pre-deployment ceremonies when you would perform for service members preparing to deploy, and moments in the Honor Guard where you are essentially having some sort of performance or ceremonial act to a grieving spouse and grieving family members. Is there a through line there?
I think so.
I'm not really sure how to ask it, but I'm just curious about your perspective on those two events.
Not sure how to answer that, but
Are they similar?
well, somebody starts their career off young, like I did. They go through their career and retire, and then they die.
Sure.
It's a full circle.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky, you get to be on their Honor Guard team,
Yeah.
at their funeral.
I think back to that female helicopter pilot you mentioned,
Yep.
and I can only certainly hope that she had an Honor Guard at her memorial service, funeral, that was just as honoring of her service as you were performing for her before she deployed.
Mm.
And so, like I said, Kathy, it was a great pleasure to speak with you tonight, and a great pleasure to hear about your service.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. I really appreciate the invitation.
With that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off of the Operation Inside podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum.
Operation Insight is brought to you by the Mid-America Veterans Museum, where we believe Every veteran has a story. If you agree and you enjoyed today's podcast, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review on whichever platform you listen. Don't forget, sharing this episode with friends and family is a great way to support the museum and our mission of sharing veteran stories. Thank you for listening.